I was drawn to all the wrong things. I liked to drink, I was lazy, I didn't have a god, politics, ideas, ideals. I was settled into nothingness, a kind of non-being, and I accepted it. I didn't make for an interesting person. I didn't want to be interesting. It was too hard. What I really wanted was only a soft, hazy space to live in and to be left alone. One thing that stands out about Bukowski's writing is that his ugliness is not manufactured. It's so concentrated, it's so brutal. It's a portrayal of a life that wasn't picturesque, that wasn't quixotic. It was flawed in a deeply pathological and visceral manner. His thoughts on love, for example, as depicted in works like Women, Factotum, Love is a Dog from Hell, are not romanticized ideals that are most commonly found in conventional literature. He mentions writers like Knut Hamsun, Burroughs, Dostoevsky, Lorca, Ezra Pound, Rimbaud, and many other writers who wrote about the human condition. He calls them and himself the sickest and the lowest of the human breed. In fact, he also talks about how he attracts only those who are outsiders, so people who have been rejected and ostracized by society. And which is why his language can seem quite gritty and demeaning, but it is not aimed at any one particular thing. It's aimed at the whole of his reality as it was and as he lived it. I always drew the unwanted. They found me right off and attached themselves. They still do. If you live in a closet with rats and eat dry bread, they like you. You're a genius then. Or if you're in the madhouse or the drunk tank, they'll call you a genius. Or if you're drunk and shouting obscenities and vomiting your life cuts on the floor, you're a genius. His writing is compulsively self-destructive in a way that is unsympathetic and bitter. He talks about death and dying, his bad luck, his addiction to alcohol, his inability to cope with loneliness and boredom, and the futility of his actions. The flesh covers the bone, and they put a mind in there and sometimes a soul. And the women break vases against the walls, and the men drink too much. And nobody finds the one, but they keep looking, crawling in and out of beds. Flesh covers the bone, and the flesh searches for more than flesh. There's no chance at all. We are all trapped by a singular fate. Nobody ever finds the one. The city dumps fill, the junkyards fill, the madhouses fill, the hospitals fill, the graveyards fill. Nothing else fills. For Bukowski, writing was a form of rebellion, of choosing authenticity over conformity, of making life and existence more endurable through art. But when you read Bukowski, you can interpret some serious psychological problems like emotional deprivation, childhood trauma, emotional neglect, crippled masculinity, and hedonistic escapism. Life, as Bukowski had lived it, was not a perpetually joyful ride. He brings to the surface a deeply disturbed image of desire, loneliness, poverty, and failure, and so much more. When we talk about the absurdity of life, alienation, and sorrow, for Bukowski, these were not just existential problems, they were the fabric of human existence. He embodies the kind of cynicism we don't say out loud to anyone, perhaps not even to our own selves. And he also rejects finding meaning and purpose in indifference, any kind of certainty in uncertainty, or a sense of comfort in chaos. The pursuit of writing for him was an act of rebelling against these absurdities of life. And this is exactly the kind of raw honesty I find most interesting to read. If you read his books like Ham on Rye, Post Office, Women, Love is a Dog from Hell, you get so alone at times it just makes sense. You will realize this about him too. Bukowski's characters are not the hero archetype. They completely reject conventional heroic traits and instead are deeply flawed and morally ambiguous. So instead of being virtuous and having noble intentions, his characters are antisocial, repulsive, and misanthropic. And this extends to everything. It infects everything, his sense of self and his relationships with women, money, food, consumption, and his own physical body. In one of his interviews, Bukowski said that not only was he blessed with a crappy life to write, but his writing was his psychiatrist letting his shit out on paper. Now this got me thinking about how one can interpret both his confessional prose and poetry as therapeutic. Now, his life was shitty, but the act of putting down his shitty and unlikable experiences into words might have served him as a cathartic process. Bukowski has a very dark humor, which is an obvious coping mechanism, but why that is best explained in Ham on Rye. Growing up in a dysfunctional family, parental abuse, emotional neglect, social alienation haunt him for the rest of his life. So it's only natural and human that all this unhealed trauma and hurt would seep into his adulthood and cause him to cling desperately to self-destructive behaviors, but also alienate him from the rest of the world. But you must understand, it's not really about what is happening when it comes to his prose and poetry, but it's about the why. And if you feel that you can actively read literature like this, then you can go ahead and read any of his books. Because Bukowski uses literature as a vehicle for creative self-expression, his writing resonates with so many readers, even if that means that most of the words that he throws at you make you feel uncomfortable. Now, his estimation of life and existence is just a drop in the ocean. And the ocean, the way I see it, is a void. Thank you for watching. This is Aisha from Read a Day Club, and I'll see you guys very soon.